Module 5. Aspects of negotiation. Pluralistic power. Pluralistic power refers to multiple power sources within a society, organization, or community. Negotiations in a pluralistic power context involve engaging with and managing multiple stakeholders' interests and power dynamics. In such situations, negotiation skills are essential to building consensus and reaching agreements that balance the interests of all parties involved. One of the critical challenges in negotiating in a pluralistic power context is the need to acknowledge and respect the diversity of viewpoints, interests, and power dynamics at play. Negotiators must recognize that each stakeholder brings a unique perspective and that their power and influence are shaped by various factors, including their social status, economic resources, and political affiliations. Successful negotiation in pluralistic power contexts requires effective communication, active listening, and navigating complex power dynamics. Negotiators must be skilled in identifying shared interests and values and conflict areas to craft mutually beneficial and sustainable agreements. One strategy for negotiating in pluralistic power contexts is building trust and relationships with all parties involved. This involves creating an environment of openness and transparency where all stakeholders feel comfortable sharing their perspectives and concerns. Negotiators must also be willing to make concessions and compromises to reach agreements that meet the needs of all parties involved. Negotiating in pluralistic power contexts requires communication skills, relationship building, and a deep understanding of complex power dynamics. By acknowledging and respecting the diversity of interests and viewpoints of all stakeholders, negotiators can create inclusive and sustainable solutions while fostering trust and collaboration among all parties involved. Suboptimal negotiation. Negotiation is a process that involves two or more parties who come together to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. However, sometimes the negotiation results in a different outcome, which can disappoint both parties. A suboptimal negotiation outcome occurs when the outcome falls short of one or both parties' expectations and fails to meet their needs and interests. There are several reasons why a suboptimal negotiation outcome may occur. One of the main reasons is a need for more preparation. They can negotiate effectively if both parties fully understand their needs and interests. Another reason is a lack of trust between the parties, which can lead to a breakdown in communication and a failure to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. A suboptimal negotiation outcome can have several negative consequences. For one, it can damage the relationship between the parties, as one or both may feel that their needs were not adequately met. This can result in a breakdown in future negotiations and a loss of opportunities for both parties. Additionally, a suboptimal negotiation outcome can lead to frustration, anger, and disappointment, affecting the parties' overall well-being. Both parties must prepare adequately, establish trust, and communicate effectively to avoid a suboptimal negotiation outcome. It is also essential to approach the negotiation collaboratively, focusing on creating value for both parties rather than simply trying to win. If a suboptimal outcome does occur, the parties need to learn from the experience, identify areas for improvement, and work towards a better outcome in future negotiations. Negotiation process consultant. A negotiation process consultant facilitates negotiations between parties to reach mutually beneficial agreements. The role of a negotiation process consultant is to help parties navigate complex negotiations, identify common ground, and reach agreements that meet the needs and interests of all parties involved. The negotiation process consultant's primary responsibility is to ensure that the negotiation process is fair, transparent, and effective. They do this by working closely with both parties to identify their interests and needs and to develop a negotiation strategy that will allow both parties to achieve their objectives. One of the key benefits of working with a negotiation process consultant is that they bring an objective perspective to the negotiation process. Because they are not directly involved in the negotiation, they can provide an unbiased view of the situation and help parties identify areas of agreement and disagreement. They can also guide how to manage emotions and maintain effective communication during negotiation. The negotiation process consultant also helps parties to develop and implement effective negotiation strategies. This includes helping parties to identify their strengths and weaknesses, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of the other party. They can also help parties to identify potential barriers to agreement and develop strategies to overcome them. Another vital role of the negotiation process consultant is to help parties to evaluate potential outcomes and make informed decisions. They can guide the risks and benefits of negotiation strategies and the potential consequences of not reaching an agreement. They can also help parties assess the agreement's long-term impact on their interests and needs. Overall, the role of a negotiation process consultant is to facilitate negotiations that result in mutually beneficial agreements. By providing an objective perspective, developing effective negotiation strategies, and helping parties to make informed decisions, they help to ensure that negotiations are fair, transparent, and effective. Negotiating when the other side has more power. Negotiation is a process where two or more parties come together to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. However, in some cases, one party may hold more power or leverage in the negotiation, making it more challenging for the other party. When negotiating with a party with more power, it is essential to use specific techniques to level the playing field and achieve a positive outcome. Here are some negotiation techniques that can be effective when negotiating with a party that has more power. Preparation. Research the other party's goals, objectives, and interests thoroughly. This will help you identify areas of agreement and disagreement and develop a negotiation strategy. BATNA. Develop a best alternative to a negotiated agreement, or BATNA. This will provide you with a fallback position if negotiations fail. Identify your strengths. Identify your strengths and areas where you have leverage. For example, you must negotiate power if you have a unique product or service that the other party needs. Focus on the other party's interests. Identify the other party's interests and needs, and try to find creative solutions that meet both parties' needs. Use objective criteria. Use objective criteria, such as market prices or industry standards, to support your position. This can help to level the playing field and make the negotiation more objective. Use active listening. Listen to the other party's concerns and interests, and ask questions to clarify their position. This can help you to find common ground and identify areas for compromise. Control the agenda. Take control of the negotiation agenda by setting clear objectives and timelines. This can help you to avoid being pushed into a corner by the other party. Persuasive style in negotiations. A persuasive style in negotiation involves using various tactics to influence the other party's behavior or decisions. This style is often used when the negotiator has limited power or resources and, therefore, must rely on their ability to persuade the other party. Some common tactics used in a persuasive style include appealing to emotions, presenting facts and evidence, and making concessions to gain the other party's trust. However, it is essential to note that while a persuasive style can be effective in some cases, it may not always lead to a mutually beneficial agreement. Therefore, negotiators should approach this style cautiously and be mindful of the potential risks and limitations. Peripheral message routes. In persuasion, the peripheral route involves the processing of messages based on cues and factors other than the actual content of the message. This could include things like the message's source, the speaker's attractiveness, or the overall tone and style of the communication. Messages should appeal to emotions, desires, and other non-rational factors to foster the peripheral route rather than relying solely on logical arguments and evidence. This can be a practical approach when dealing with audiences with a weak background or interest in the subject matter or when time is limited and a quick decision is required. Negotiations within a relationship that may never end. Negotiating within relationships that may never end requires a different approach than those with a finite timeline. In ongoing relationships, parties are more likely to value maintaining the relationship itself in addition to negotiating the specific issue at hand. Communication, respect, and empathy become even more critical factors in maintaining a successful negotiation within an ongoing relationship. Parties must work to build trust and understanding while considering the long-term impact of their decisions. Collaboration and creativity can also play a more significant role in finding mutually beneficial solutions that allow the relationship to continue successfully. Parties must find ways to preserve the relationship while working towards a resolution that meets their needs and interests. Changes in negotiation dynamics. Existing relationships can significantly influence the dynamics of a negotiation. When parties have an established history, it can affect their level of trust, communication style, and willingness to compromise. For example, in a negotiation between two business partners, a history of successful collaborations can lead to more open communication and a greater willingness to find mutually beneficial solutions. On the other hand, if there have been past conflicts or mistrust, establishing a productive negotiation process may be more challenging. In such situations, addressing and resolving past issues may be necessary before moving forward with the current negotiation. Overall, existing relationships can either facilitate or hinder the negotiation process and should be considered by all parties involved. Relationship negotiations. In relationship negotiation, resolving simple distributive issues can significantly impact future decisions. This is because how negotiators interact and communicate during the negotiation process can shape the relationship and set the tone for future negotiations. If negotiators can successfully resolve simple distributive issues respectfully and collaboratively, it can build trust and strengthen the relationship. This can lead to more successful negotiations in the future, as both parties feel comfortable working together and are more likely to approach negotiations with a cooperative mindset. On the other hand, if negotiators cannot resolve simple distributive issues and engage in a contentious or confrontational negotiation process, it can damage the relationship and make future negotiations more difficult. This can create a cycle of distrust and hostility, where each party is more likely to approach negotiations with a defensive or competitive mindset. Therefore, it is essential for negotiators to approach simple distributive issues with a collaborative mindset and to focus on finding mutually beneficial solutions. This helps establish a positive relationship and sets the stage for successful future negotiations.